So a bench warrant is just issued whenever you fail to show up for court. Sometimes that's followed with like a bond revocation. But usually it's just the judge issues a bench warrant and, they pick you up. Often it's, in most cases that I've seen, it's not people trying to flee. It's just being careless. If you've got a private attorney, usually we're in pretty good communication with our client, and so once we file in any sort of court date, what they typically do is they'll send a copy to the defendant, but also the attorney is entitled to notice as well. So when we get something, we forward a copy to the client, and then usually, within a few days before, we just call them and say, hey, here's a reminder, you've got court on this date, because that's the last thing we need. The person losing their bond or being held in jail until trial, it just makes things a lot more difficult. In most cases, almost all cases, the client is a lot more familiar with the facts, and them being able to proactively help us with their defense is really important. And trying to do that with them in jail is a nightmare. So we try to make sure that if there's a problem, we can address it. Oftentimes if it's, mama's in the hospital or something like that, we can usually, as long as we know in advance, we can let the court know that, hey, here's this issue, can we get a continuance? Can we do, whatever? The worst thing you can possibly do is not show up, because that's guaranteed to result in a bench warrant. But like I say, usually it's not people fleeing. I have had that on occasion, but usually it's just, I moved and I didn't update my address, or, they sent it to the address on my driver's license, which, I haven't lived there in 10 years, that kind of thing. Generally, when you have a private hire attorney, that's not an issue, because you've got to be in contact with us. Now, we have had an issue where the client has, changed their phone number or something and not let us know. But usually we've got so many ways to communicate. We've got a physical address, we've got an email address, we've got at least a couple of phone numbers. Usually it's give me your phone number, your spouse's phone number, your mother's phone number. So if we've got to get a hold of you, we can. I think it's often, people represented by, say, the public defender, and they're not staying on top of it, making sure that their public defender knows where they are and has a means to get in touch with them. We also have people call us who have a bench warrant and want to know what to do. Well, we file into the case as their attorney, and then, we get their side of the story, what happened. And then generally we go to the judge and the prosecutor, or sometimes just the prosecutor to start with, and say, hey, this was a misunderstanding, kind of plead the case, and at any rate, it won't happen again, and he's been sitting in jail for a few days already. He's learned his lesson. Or I guess if they're calling us and they're out, sometimes we are able to, get the bench warrant quashed before they're even actually taken into jail. That's really best case scenario. And again, it's just explaining what happened. Judge, I'm here now. I've got good contact info for him. We'll make sure he knows about his court dates coming up. And generally that's, at least if it's your first time, getting a bench, not showing up to a hearing, usually that's enough.